visionary, an entrepreneur, a business owner. You want to make money from your passion and create the freedom that you've dreamed of. But it's slow. The income is slow, the impact is slow, and the freedom is slow. And here's the kicker. You've actually never been busier. You're working longer than ever, burning through daylight, and your family have forgotten who you are. You're tired and frustrated and you can't even sleep well at night. The business just feels so heavy, and all you ever wanted to do was just make the money you want to make doing the things that you want to do. And that's where I come in. Hi, if we haven't met yet, my name is Dr. Storme, and I'm the host of the Business Acceleration Podcast, where we shift your business from heavy to light, time poor to time abundant, and from income lack to income growth. We're going to achieve it together with my 20 years experience as a psychologist, helping people just like you to break through their barriers. And we're going to throw in a little of the woo as well. So thank you so much for pushing play today. Let's begin. Good morning, everybody. Happy Saturday and welcome to another episode of the Business Acceleration Podcast. I'm so excited to be here today because today's episode came about following a recent post that I popped up on Facebook during the week. So what happened was I uploaded a fun quiz about passion and purpose, and it's still up if you want to try it. You can go and check out my personal profile. I think on Facebook it's Brooklyn Gabe, Gabe, number 9, or you can just do a Google search for me and I'm sure my Facebook page will come up. It's also on the Facebook page for Dr. Brooklyn Storme Business Acceleration. So if you just scroll back through the post, you'll see that. Anyway, so it's a fun little quiz, and what came about from that was, some people had some questions and we were reflecting on the findings, and somebody did mention about feeling as if they were experiencing imposter syndrome. And so I wanted to reach out and I said, hey, would you like me to do a podcast about this? And she said, yes. So here we are. And this is going to be a very practical, applied, hands-on podcast. So if you're not driving, what I suggest you do is pause and go and grab yourself a pen and paper as usual, because you will get a lot of journal prompts today, which can be used to assist you with your transformation, which is the whole point of these podcasts. I want you to experience a little bit of a shift. Okay. So, did you know that in 2011, some research was conducted on imposter syndrome, and guess what? The researchers found that on average, approximately 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome in their lifetime. And guess what else? Of those people, the majority tend to be women that are high achievers. The most common time for us to experience imposter syndrome is when we're first beginning a new job. So isn't that interesting? And I would wonder, if you can think back to when you first started a new role or a new position or a new career or something like that. How did you feel? Did you feel perhaps like a little bit of an imposter then? If you don't know what I mean by that, imposter syndrome was a concept that was developed, I think it was about 40 years ago now, by two psychologists, and I think they were both women, and they found that when we attribute our success to luck or chance as opposed to the work or effort we put in, that among other things can often lead to what they've called imposter syndrome. And they've proposed that there were 5 different types, and I will go through each of them now for you so that you can see if there's any that you identify with. But before I do that, I just want to share my experience of imposter syndrome. So a few years ago now, I think it was 2016, I had gone away on a retreat and it was suggested to me that, hey, maybe what you do is a video, jump on and do a video on Facebook. Now, I hadn't really been very active on Facebook prior to then. As you know, I was a late comer to Facebook and social media, though you wouldn't know it now. I'm all over the place. But at the time, I just sort of took the bull by the horns and ran with it. So I said, yep, okay. And right that day, I did my very first ever live video on Facebook. And it wasn't fantastic, but you know what? I did it. And then what happened was after that, I decided that I wanted to do a challenge. So I did a challenge where for 90 days, I recorded a live video of myself, either at work or at home, or showing some part of my life that I was willing to share with the public. And sometimes these videos went for a couple of minutes, sometimes they went for a lot longer. But when I first started, it took me a little while to get comfortable with the idea, because I did go through a stage of, oh, who am I to be talking about this? Why would anybody want to listen to me? I'm not an expert. And I think too, in, a lot of my clients tend to be working in the field of allied health services. And I don't know what it's like in other countries, but in Australia, if you're a psychologist or a physio, for example, a physiotherapist, you're very restricted in terms of how you can present information, whether or not you can call yourself an expert. You can't even call yourself a specialist. So that kind of seeks to, I think, reinforce in some of us that, are you an imposter? And really, nobody's an expert. And so why are you thinking that it's okay for you to write this blog post on this topic, or do a talk about this topic, or do a video about this topic? It's something that you need to work through for yourself. I think what worked for me, and I'll share this with you as we go through the podcast today, was shifting my perspective on it, of course. And I'll tell you how I did that in a moment. But first of all, can you identify with any of these 5 types of imposter syndrome? So the first one is the perfectionist. What do you think that might mean? So essentially, people with this type of imposter syndrome can take making mistakes really personally and really hard, and often view themselves as a failure as a result of making a really tiny error. Now, have you ever been in that position? Can you identify with that at all? We probably all know a perfectionist in our circle, and they're often the one that is, micromanaging, doing everything just so, and might submit work late because she wants it to be just right, and all of this sort of stuff. And if she gets any feedback, or even on her social, if she gets any feedback that isn't reinforcing the idea that she's good, worthy, on the right track, and things like that, she can take it very, very personally. And this can have really big consequences, and it can lead to all sorts of things, but things like perhaps anxiety even, or a fear then of stepping up and speaking about her passion again in the future. It might also result in things like her procrastinating more in the future before she releases things, because she doesn't want to experience that feeling of failure, okay? The second one is called the soloist. Now, people with this type of imposter syndrome often believe that they need to do everything themselves, okay? And can you guess, entrepreneurs score especially highly on this type of syndrome. You see, a lot of the time we don't want to delegate, because we can see it as failure sometimes if we have to do things like ask for help. So sometimes we put off hiring the VA. Sometimes we put off outsourcing the work. We tend to hold a perception that we're the only ones that can do it. If we outsource it, it's not going to get done to our standards. And you know what? The reality is that you're right in some ways. There are going to be times when you do delegate the work and it's done differently to the way you'd like it to be done, but it still gets done. And there might be other times that you delegate the work and you might not get the exact result that you were wanting or needing. And then that's okay too, because that experience can be used, we can transmute the energy, is what I want to say. We want to take that experience for the entrepreneur from being something that was really difficult to process to something that becomes a learning experience, because when we learn from it, guess what happens? We grow. And when you grow, the energy improves, and it's not a yucky low vibration anymore. It's a much better vibration in terms of calling in the things that we want in our business that are going to make the business thrive. So that's super, super, super important, okay? So soloists thinking that they need to do everything themselves. Okay, now The next one you might also know, because I think if you're a business owner like I am, you've probably been here before. And this is called Superwoman. And if you're a guy listening to a podcast, welcome. Maybe you can identify as perhaps a Superman experience. But people with this type of imposter syndrome are generally always going. They're like the Energizer Bunny. They're non-stop. They see themselves as really high achievers. For the fact that they work longer hours than the rest of us, they rarely, if ever, take days off. And I mean, not just, we call it in Australia a mental health day, when you feel like you can't go in because you're not going to be productive or you're not in the zone and things like that. Sometimes we can take what's called a mental health day. But an entrepreneur will still go to work when they're sick, and they're not going to take time off over the holiday period and things like that. They think that there's a correlation between the hours that you work and what you're achieving. And the other thing that is unique to this subtype of imposter syndrome is the experience that they need to be achieving not just in the work domain, but in family, in social settings, in recreational settings. So if they're in the netball team, they want to be on the winning team, and they're the ones that are going to turn up early to training, stay back behind after training, ask for extra coaching, all that sort of stuff because they want to win. Things like that. So being a Superman or the Superwoman in all areas of your life and trying to win in all areas of your life because you feel that if you don't, if there's an area that you don't be so successful in, that then that's going to mean that you're an imposter and that you're a failure. So I'm just checking if I've got them. Oh, and one more, the expert. Okay. So maybe you all know this type of person as well, and I've certainly come across this type of imposter syndrome subtype. It is a subtype of the air quotes expert, okay? So this is the person that's constantly enrolling in courses, and they do this because they feel that they need even more qualifications so that they can see themselves as credible. This syndrome makes them think that they will never, ever really be truly qualified to speak in anything. So they stay in this loop of enrolling in courses. So we see this sometimes, I worked for a long time as a psychologist in the employment sector in Australia, and it's actually what I wrote my PhD on as well, helping long-term unemployed people with dual diagnosis, etc., get work after, they'd been out of the workforce for, 36 months or longer. But after I finished working with that cohort of people, then I started working with people who didn't have dual diagnosis, people who didn't have mental health barriers, people who were, say, mums going back to work, or people who were dads going back to work after they'd been looking after children. And what would happen is they would enroll in a course to get their skills up so that they could then go and do the job that they wanted to do. But then when the course finished, instead of applying for a job, they went and enrolled in another course. And then they went and enrolled in another course, and another one, and another one, and another one. And often this happens because they don't feel within themselves that they have anything credible or viable or valuable enough to offer. So they think that their worth is tied up in having the letters after their name and having the certificates and the diplomas on the CV or the resume, okay? So that type of person. And that's probably, I think, in terms of a coaching perspective, that's probably one of the hardest loops to break. The others you can work through with mindset, and I'll give you some prompts today, don't worry. But I think if I had to pick of those 5 subtypes, which one is the most difficult to work through, I would definitely say it's the subtype of the expert. Okay. So, there's one more. No, have I gone over it? Natural genius. Okay, this is the last one, sorry. So this is number 5. Number 5 is the natural genius subtype. And you probably know this person as well. I knew 2 of these people when I was studying. So the natural genius subtype is that people in this category often find things generally come really easily to them compared to others. Okay, they don't really have to try as hard to get the same or better results. So when things don't come as easily to them, they feel embarrassed, ashamed, guilty, things like that. So the natural genius is the person who doesn't really spend hours studying for the exam that's coming up, because they just know that they're going to turn up and they've got a really good chance of passing it and passing it well. And guess what? They do. They're the person who is just naturally good at sport, naturally good at relationships, naturally hitting goals in all of these different areas. And so when something happens that makes them need to push or try or exert some kind of effort or energy or learning, that feels really strange and really uncomfortable, and they don't like that. And then all of these thoughts come to their mind, which then lead to feelings of, shame and embarrassment and guilt, among other things. It's different for everybody. Okay, so there are some things that you can do. I think, first of all, when you're experiencing imposter syndrome and you're a business owner, the thing that comes to my mind is you're making this about you. And it's kind of like when you want to sell and you want to sell something, and people talk about soft selling and authentic selling and stuff like that. I think, when you're having a sales conversation with somebody, people hate that. A lot of people don't like doing that at all, and they will avoid it, and they want to, just not even have those conversations, because they feel like, who are they to offer this solution? Who are they to offer this service? Nobody's going to want to buy it, etc., etc., etc. It's when you're having those sorts of experiences, when you're trying to sell or enroll people into your programs or services, what's happening there is you're personalizing the process and you're losing sight of why you're doing it, And it's the same with imposter syndrome. When you're caught up in the superwoman, the expert, the perfectionist, all of those sorts of subtypes, you're making things about you and you're losing sight of the reason why you're doing it in the first place, okay? So the reason you probably started your business was probably to help people in some way. I don't know what you do, but I know from a health perspective, people generally want to help people live a healthier, happier, more fulfilling life and all of that sort of stuff, right? So instead of thinking about yourself and thinking, I'm not good enough, I don't know enough, I'm not qualified enough, how about we shift your focus? Instead of looking at you, we look back at your audience and we think, oh, well, how can I help that person? And how can I help that person over there who's got depression? How can I help that person over there who wants to lose weight? How can I help that person over there who wants to manage her time more efficiently and get more productivity out of it? How can I help this mum over here who wants to go back to work? How can I help this leader over here be more effective in managing his team? Right? Things like that. When you ask yourself, how can you help? Boom, straight away, we've put our attention back onto our audience and away from us. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. The other thing too is to remember that we create our reality through our beliefs. So whatever you believe is what you're going to experience in the world around you. So you've heard of the saying, I'll believe it when I see it. I think that, this should actually be switched around a bit, because what's really happening is, what you believe you see, okay? So have a look at what you believe about why you're an imposter. Can really help you raise your awareness around whether or not those beliefs are working for you or against you, whether they're legitimate or not, whether they're valid or not. And then you can start to make choices about what you would rather believe, okay? And then thinking too about, law of reciprocity. So in order to be able to give to somebody. So if you want to give somebody information about what you do, about how you help, about maybe you want to educate them on a tool or a strategy or a tip or something like that, well, this law also says that you have to be okay with receiving. So be mindful in your life of whether or not you're allowing yourself to receive positive feedback about the work that you do. When somebody says to you, well done, when somebody says to you, that helped me a lot, when somebody private messages you and says, thank you so much, it was like you were in my head, and how did you know I really needed to hear that? Don't dismiss that, because when you do, energetically, you send out a blueprint to the universe that says, I don't want any more of this. And so the universe will stop delivering it, and you will stop seeing it in your reality. And the way that that works is because as part of your brain, the reticular activating system, whose job it is to go out into the world and bring back information that's going to support the things that you believe. Okay? Your mind gets over 400 billion bits of information a second and can only process 2,000. So it needs to have beliefs as the filter, right? Your brain wants to conserve as much energy as possible. It has a really high caloric burn in terms of the body, and it wants to make everything sort of as streamlined and simple and as easy as it can. So if you are not allowing yourself to receive the hearts, the likes, the thumbs up, the nice email, the praise, the thanks, and things like that, you will stop seeing it. And what will happen is you will only see the negative comments or comments you take personally that aren't negative, and that's going to then feed into this perception that you're not good enough, or you don't know enough, or that you're an imposter. Okay? There's a law of vibration. So remember that everything in the world has energy. Everything's made up of atoms and particles, and it's all spinning at, different rates, and everything has its own energetic signature. Okay. And so you want to be matching the signature to what you want to be putting out there. So if you want to believe that you're helping, you need to deliver services from a vibration of helping, okay? If you want to experience confidence, you need to be working from a place of confidence. And you do that through things like affirming that you know what you're talking about, affirming that you have something that can help these people, affirming that you can be present for them, affirming that you've walked your path and you bring a personal experience to this that can't be found in books, right? Affirming that it's okay for you to not be the expert in your field. You're someone in your field who's making a difference and who's making a contribution, and you put your focus on that. Those sorts of approaches energetically are going to have a much higher success rate at working for you in terms of shifting this idea of imposter syndrome than coming at it from something that's more low vibrational. So if your goal is to be able to step into your power with your work, I would really encourage you to consider what you would need to do to raise your energetic frequency to be a good match for that. Okay, then we've got, of course, law of attraction. So like attracts like. This is the most well-known of the 12 universal laws, isn't it? So essentially, if you do not perceive yourself as knowing as much as everybody else, if you think other people know more than you, etc., if you think you're not good enough, well, guess what? You're going to get that back, because it can't not happen. You're going to jump on a Facebook Live video as an unconfident person who's apologetic for what she doesn't know, who comes across as not being confident and knowledgeable. And guess what? You're going to get comments back that, reflect that belief that you hold, because you're putting that belief out there. So you're going to get people questioning you. You're going to get people not questioning you in a collegial way where they want to have a discussion, but it'll be questioning you in not a nice way. And then that's just going to create a feedback loop for you. Some people might even say it's what's it called? Self-fulfilling prophecy. So really have a think about, again, like attracting like. If you want to step out there and show that you're confident sharing your message. That's all it is. And everybody's got a different message, and nobody's ever going to have your message. You can be as confident as you like with that, and you're going to get back people who feel confident in what you're saying and confident in what you're sharing, and they're going to want to relate to you and connect with you because they're starting to like you, and then over time they're going to build that know factor and then that trust factor. Okay, and then there's also law of cause and effect. So I guess, you know, this idea at its very, very basic is really around knowing that every action has an equal and opposite reaction, yeah? So we know this to be true in the physical world, but have you thought about what's happening for you in terms of a more spiritual sense? Okay, so what are you being the cause of, and what is the effect that's coming back to you as a result of that? All right, have a think about that. So they're not your questions. I'm going to give you the questions in a minute, but what else have I written down here for you? Okay, yeah, have a think too about where are you now and where do you think you need to be in order to be able to help someone? What are you using as the measure of credibility? And is this a valid measure? And like we said before, you don't need more qualifications, guys. Something that really helped me when I was struggling with imposter syndrome was how can I describe it? If you've been following me for a while, you'll know I've spoken about this before. I try and access a part of, I don't know if you'll call it your soul or your spirit or something like that, or your consciousness, that I think is my higher self. And so my higher self is this version of Brooklyn that's living her very best life. And I believe part of my role on this earth is to try and always be in sync with her. Okay, she's always a few steps ahead of me, and I always want to be following her path. Okay, and I know that when I experience something like doubt or fear or insecurity or discomfort or things like that, that usually that's because I've veered off the path and I need to step back in line with her. She is leading me, and so I want to consult with her, and I want to, well, for me, I use visualization or imagination, and I might take a couple of breaths, and then I can just close my eyes and I can just see the best version of Brooklyn, and I can say, okay, how does Brooklyn there show up in her podcasts? How does that Brooklyn show up in her Facebook? How does that Brooklyn show up as a coach? How does that Brooklyn support her clients? How does that Brooklyn over deliver? How does that, right? And so you can do this for yourself as well. All you need to do is spend some time sitting with the idea of, okay, let's imagine I do have a higher self in there somewhere. What is she doing? How would she handle this talk that I'm about to give? How would she handle this, that, or the other? Okay, that is probably the most powerful tool for me, but there are many, many tools. Okay, here's a question for you. What does being an imposter let you off the hook for? What do you get to avoid by holding on to the view that other people know more about this than you? Think about that. So that's just coming at things from a different perspective. I'm not saying this to be mean or anything like that. I just want to give you, like a diamond, how the diamond has lots of different sides. I'm just giving you a different side, that's all. And I don't sugarcoat things. I'm a bit blunt, aren't I? Sorry about that. A spiritual coach who's quite blunt. There you go. That should be my next tagline. Okay. And yeah, so imposter syndrome basically being a discrepancy between what you know and what you think other people know. You think there might be a lot of people out there that might know a lot more than you, but the reality is that they don't. And the way that I would support you with getting on board with that whole idea is just by anchoring into the experiences that you have had, your unique experiences, your unique views, your unique message. Maybe your message isn't even unique, but maybe the story is, because you know what? Nobody is you. Nobody has walked your path. Nobody is bringing to the table the exact same experience as you. And I think that is your authority. And I think if you're someone who gets stuck in her own head and might have trouble working through some of the prompts that I'm about to give you, maybe remember that you are the authority in your life. You are the authority in the experiences that you have had, and nobody can take that away from you. No one with a PhD can take that away with you. No one who's a professor can take that away from you. Nobody who's an influencer with 16 million followers can take that away from you, because it's yours. Yep, that's your authority. So you're not an imposter when you're speaking about your truth, your experience of reality. Okay. Here we go with some questions. So I have 5 questions. So this would be the time to write them down. So first of all, in what area of your life are you not taking responsibility for your success? In what area of your life are you not taking responsibility for your success? So think about this. Maybe it's part of work. Maybe it's something to do at home. And between you and I, you know that you are responsible for some kind of success, but you've either dismissed it, you've played it down, you've given the success away to somebody else and said, oh no, it was all Sophie's work, she deserves all the credit, and you've thought that there was something good in doing that. But when it comes to imposter syndrome, that's not helping you. So take a moment to reflect, in what area of your life are you not taking responsibility for your successes? Number 2, what do you believe about success? What do you believe about success? What thoughts do you currently hold about being successful that might be holding you back? What thoughts do you currently hold about being successful that might be holding you back? Oh, that's such a good question. I love that. Okay. The third one. Which of your abilities and strengths are you not acknowledging? Okay. Which of your abilities and your strengths are you not acknowledging? That's another good one, isn't it? And I would love to know what the reason is for not acknowledging them. So if you wanted to take that further, you could ask yourself, what are the reasons that I'm not acknowledging them? And I bet that brings up a whole lot of other stuff for you. Maybe you're not acknowledging them because you think it's not acceptable to be proud of an achievement or something like that. I don't know what might come up for you, but it's a good question. Number 4, what will releasing imposter syndrome mean that you need to let go of? What will releasing imposter syndrome mean that you need to let go of? That's a really good one too, isn't it? And the last one here is what will open up for you once you do let go of imposter syndrome? What will open up for you once you do let go of imposter syndrome? What new experiences will you now be able to have? What new opportunities will come your way? What will become available to you? All right? So guys, look, imposter syndrome is super common, especially among high achievers and especially when we're starting new jobs. And it's really often part of the journey of stepping into your calling or your higher purpose. The prompts I've given you are really useful for raising your awareness around how you think and feel, But this is also a super big topic, and the extent of the impact of imposter syndrome varies from person to person. I see that with my coaching clients. And for that reason, I absolutely 100% invite you to join me so that I can support you with your unique and important experiences. The best way to do that is in a coaching program. So I'll pop a link in the comments for you. You can get some more information. And guys, don't forget, if you're running a business and you really need an angel in your corner, there's also the service that I have available now. It's called Your Secret Angel. And it was designed in response to a need for business owners to have a safe and private one-to-one space to discuss stressful situations in business. You know, not everybody wants to go into a public group forum and say, oh, this has happened in my business. And they don't want to do that because they don't want to lose the authority that they've built in their roles. There's feelings of guilt, shame, embarrassment, all of that sort of yucky stuff. And so what happens is people don't share that. And then we get groups where people are only sharing parts of their journey, parts of their experience, and then we've got people going home and they're snapping at the husband, snapping at the kids, not sleeping well, promising the girlfriends that they'll go out with them on Saturday night, and then bailing on them at the last minute and not going because they are so stressed about something that's happening in the business. You don't need coaching. This is not a coaching program, Your Secret Angel. Your Secret Angel is an angel in your back pocket. She's on retainer. She's there. Every month you get to talk to her for half an hour about something that might be causing you a lot of stress in your business. Maybe it's a difficult client. Maybe somebody's asking for a refund and you don't want to give it. I don't know. It can be all sorts of things. I'm here for you. So please check out the links for that as well. The other thing that I really love about both the coaching and Your Secret Angel is that they can be tax deductible investments as well. Plus, you get a really good return on them if you use them. So anyway, have a look, check them out. Of course, get in touch with me for more information. I'm going to wrap it up now because I've been speaking for such a long time. But thank you so much for listening. And please remember to leave me a review on Apple Podcasts and let me know what your biggest aha moment was from this episode, because when you do that, it bumps the podcast up in the rankings, which means I can achieve my goal of helping more people because my podcast will be more easily found. So thank you so much, guys. Have a very happy Saturday and I'll talk to you later. Bye. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope that you enjoyed it and got a lot of value from it. Help me help others by sharing this podcast. And if you feel called to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, remember to let me know so that I can send you a very special thank you gift. Now go and build your dream business and I will see you next time. Bye.